Welcome back, everyone, to another episode. I'm Marco.
And I'm Maria. Thanks for joining us once again. Today we're going to talk about a topic that affects all of us, no matter where we live: climate change.
It's a topic everyone's talking about, but sometimes it's not entirely clear what it actually is, what's causing it, and how it differs from global warming.
So, in the next few minutes, we're going to explain it to you clearly, simply, and above all, without alarmism, but with awareness. So, in the next few minutes, we're going to explain it to you clearly, simply, and above all, without alarmism, but with awareness. Climate change is a significant and long-lasting alteration in Earth's climate patterns. That includes variations in temperature, rainfall, winds, and other aspects of the climate that last for decades or even centuries.
So the planet's climate has changed before, right?
Exactly. Throughout Earth's history, there have been cold periods like ice ages and warm periods. It's natural for the climate to change. But what's concerning is the speed at which it's happening now.
And here comes a very common question. Are climate change and global warming the same thing?
Good question. No, they're not the same. Global warming is one part of climate change. Specifically, it refers to the increase in the planet's average temperature.
So climate change is a broader concept.
That's right. It also includes phenomena like more intense hurricanes, longer droughts, torrential rains, wildfires, melting glaciers, not just heat.
And why is this climate change happening? Is it only humanity's fault?
Partly yes and partly no. There are natural causes like volcanic eruptions or certain solar cycles. But the problem is that human activities have greatly accelerated this process.
For example, burning fossil fuels like oil, gas, or coal, right?
Exactly. That generates carbon dioxide, CO2, and other greenhouse gases. There's also deforestation, which removes trees that capture CO2. And not to mention industrial agriculture, which also produces methane, another potent gas.
You mentioned the greenhouse effect. Can you explain what it is?
Sure. Imagine the atmosphere is like a greenhouse. Part of the sun's energy enters, heats the Earth's surface, and some of that heat tries to escape into space. Greenhouse gases trap some of that heat, which is good to some extent. Without that effect, the planet would be frozen.
But when there are too many of those gases...
Then the planet heats up more than it should. That's what's happening now. CO2 concentrations are at levels never seen in hundreds of thousands of years.
And in response to that, many people ask, what can I do?
That's a great question. No one can solve this alone, but we can all contribute. By reducing energy consumption, using more public transportation, eating more sustainably, planting trees, educating ourselves, and pressuring governments to act.
And above all, not falling into indifference. This isn't a problem of the future. It's already happening. It just affects some more than others. For now.
But we all live on the same planet, and we all breathe the same air.
Because as the planet heats up, ecosystems change or disappear.
Exactly. Many species can't adapt quickly enough to rising temperatures, changes in rainfall, seasons, or sea level.
For example, at the poles, the ice is melting, which affects not only polar bears, but the entire Arctic ecosystem.
Yes, and in the oceans, coral reefs are dying due to rising water temperatures and acidification. They're like the rainforests of the sea, full of life. And when they die, thousands of species lose their homes.
One of the most noticeable consequences is that species are migrating, right?
Yes. Some are fleeing to colder or higher areas. For example, birds and butterflies are changing their migratory routes. But that doesn't always work.
Because if their food doesn't migrate with them, or if they encounter humans or other species they don't know,
They can die. And many are disappearing. The extinction rate today is 1,000 times faster than the natural rate. We are already experiencing what some scientists call the sixth great mass extinction.
one of the most affected ecosystems is tropical rainforest, right?
Yes, they are enormous reservoirs of biodiversity. But rising temperatures, along with deforestation, are causing droughts, fires, and the loss of species that only exist there. And let's not forget mountain ecosystems. Many species that live at specific altitudes are running out of space to move higher. They literally have nowhere else to go.
And of course, all of this also affects us humans. And in Arctic areas, the melting ice is accelerating everything. It changes the global climate, raises sea levels, and destroys the habitat of animals like seals, walruses, and caribou.
Yes, because by altering ecosystems, we increase the risk of pandemics, lose food and water sources, and worsen air quality.
But we still have time to do something. Protecting biodiversity is protecting ourselves.
Reducing our emissions, protecting natural areas, reforesting, and supporting conservation policies are urgent steps. And also educating ourselves, like you're doing now by listening to this podcast.
Now, our oceans are also in danger. From rising sea levels caused by melting ice caps to increasing seawater acidification, these are imminent problems. They're happening right now.
Let's start with something that's become increasingly visible in recent decades: the rising sea levels. Marco, can you explain why that's happening?
Of course, it's mainly due to two things: melting glaciers and polar ice sheets, and what's called thermal expansion. As global temperatures rise, ice in places like Greenland and Antarctica is melting. That water flows into the oceans, raising sea levels.
And thermal expansion, that's when warmer water takes up more space, right?
Exactly. Water expands as it warms, and with rising global temperatures, the oceans are literally swelling. It might seem like a small change, but even just a few centimeters can have huge consequences.
Especially for coastal cities. Think of places like Miami, New York, Jakarta, or even entire island nations like the Maldives. They're experiencing flooding, shoreline erosion, and saltwater intrusion into freshwater supplies.
And the scary part? Some projections suggest that sea levels could rise by 1 meter or more by the end of this century if emissions continue at their current pace.
A meter might not sound like much, but it could displace millions of people and cause trillions in damages. Entire ecosystems along coastlines would vanish.
Exactly. And while that's devastating, there's another issue unfolding below the surface. One we can't see, but that's just as alarming. Ocean acidification.
Yes, this is caused by the oceans absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Around 30% of the CO2 we emit ends up in the ocean. That's good in a way. It slows down global warming, but it comes with a heavy price.
When CO2 dissolves in seawater, it forms carbonic acid, lowering the pH of the water. This makes it more acidic, and that affects marine life, especially creatures with calcium carbonate shells like corals, clams, oysters, and tiny plankton.
These organisms are the foundation of the marine food web. If they weaken or disappear, entire marine ecosystems are at risk, including fish species that millions of people rely on for food.
And don't forget coral reefs. Warmer, more acidic oceans are causing coral bleaching and even death. These reefs support 25% of all marine life, despite covering less than 1% of the ocean floor.
The Great Barrier Reef, for example, has already lost a huge portion of its coral due to repeated bleaching events. And it's not just about beauty, it's about biodiversity, fisheries, and coastal protection.
So what can we do? It feels overwhelming, but there are solutions. We need to reduce carbon emissions fast through clean energy, conservation, and global cooperation.
And support ocean conservation projects. Protecting mangroves, seagrass beds, and wetlands helps buffer coastal areas and absorb carbon. Plus, sustainable fishing and reducing plastic waste also play a role.
Absolutely. Every action counts. Whether it's choosing renewable energy, eating less seafood, or supporting environmental policies, we all have a part to play.
Let's start with one of the most visible impacts: changing seasons and extreme weather. Traditionally, farmers relied on predictable seasons to plant and harvest crops. But that's changing.
Absolutely. Many regions are experiencing shorter or more erratic growing seasons. Rain might come too early or too late. In some areas, crops are drying out due to drought, while in others, heavy rains and floods are washing away topsoil.
And it's not just about crops. Livestock are suffering too. Animals need stable temperatures and access to water and grasslands. During heat waves, livestock can die from heat stress or produce less milk and meat.
And when water becomes scarce, pastures dry up, leaving farmers with little to feed their herds. That leads to reduced income, higher food prices, and in some cases, people are forced to leave their land.
Yes, we're already seeing climate migration. People abandoning rural areas because farming is no longer sustainable. In parts of Africa, South Asia, and Central America, families are moving to cities or across borders because they can't grow enough to survive.
That brings us to a huge global concern: food security. If entire regions can no longer produce the food they once did, we're looking at potential food shortages, price spikes, and even hunger crises.
And let's not forget, the world population is growing. We'll need more food in the coming decades, but we're losing the capacity to grow it in many areas.
So what can we do? Are there solutions?
Definitely. Scientists and farmers are working together on climate-resilient agriculture. That includes developing crops that can survive with less water, or that can grow in salty or hotter soils. Agroecology and sustainable farming practices are also gaining momentum.
Also, using early warning systems and climate data can help farmers plan better. Governments can support small-scale farmers with insurance, training, and access to technology.
And we, as consumers, have a role too. Reducing food waste, supporting local farmers, and even adjusting our diets can ease pressure on the food system.
Exactly. Every action counts. Think of how many resources go into one meal: land, water, energy, labor. Being mindful about what we eat is one way to support a healthier planet.
Before we wrap up, let's leave our listeners with a thought. Food is not just about nutrition. It's about justice, stability, and survival. If climate change threatens our food systems, it threatens our future.
Exactly. We're seeing these events all over the world. From record-breaking storms in the Caribbean to deadly wildfires in Australia and California, to heat waves that shut down entire cities. The question is, why is this happening?
The short answer? Climate change. As the Earth's temperature rises, it's changing the way weather systems behave. Let's break it down, starting with hurricanes.
Sure. Hurricanes are fueled by warm ocean water. As global temperatures rise, ocean surfaces get hotter. That extra heat gives hurricanes more energy, making them stronger, wetter, and slower moving.
Which is a dangerous combination. Slower hurricanes dump more rain over one area, causing catastrophic flooding. Think of Hurricane Harvey in 2017 or Hurricane Ian in 2022. They left behind billions in damages and took many lives.
And that's just storms. Now let's talk about wildfires. In recent years, wildfires have devastated large parts of Canada, Australia, Greece, and the western United States. These fires are not just larger, they're also happening more often and in places where they didn't before.
That's because warmer temperatures dry out vegetation, turning forests and grasslands into tinderboxes. Add longer droughts and strong winds, and you have the perfect conditions for fast-spreading, intense wildfires.
And let's not forget the human cost. Homes destroyed, wildlife habitats lost, entire communities displaced. The air quality during fire season can be hazardous even for people living hundreds of miles away.
Yes, in 2023, smoke from Canadian wildfires darkened skies over New York City. It was surreal and a warning of what's to come.
And now we come to heat waves, possibly the most underestimated threat. Heat waves are becoming hotter, longer, and more frequent. They can be silent killers, especially for the elderly, children, and people with health conditions.
Do you remember the 2022 heat wave in Europe? Temperatures went above 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, in cities like London and Paris. Thousands died, crops withered, train tracks warped, and wildfires broke out across the continent.
Yes, and in places where air conditioning isn't common, the effects were deadly. Heat waves are also putting massive stress on energy grids, water supplies, and public health systems.
So what ties all of this together? Again, it's the warming climate. A hotter atmosphere holds more moisture, shifts wind patterns, and increases the likelihood of extreme and unpredictable weather.
It's important to realize these aren't natural disasters in the traditional sense. Human-caused climate change is making natural events far more destructive.
That said, it's not hopeless. We can invest in climate adaptation, like early warning systems, better urban planning, and stronger infrastructure.
And of course, we must reduce greenhouse gas emissions to slow warming. The faster we act, the more we can prevent worst-case scenarios.
Also, let's not overlook community resilience. Local governments, NGOs, and citizens are finding ways to prepare and respond better to disasters.
Still, the message is clear. What was once considered rare is becoming the new normal. We need to be informed, alert, and proactive.
Many of the people hit hardest by extreme weather events are those who've contributed the least to climate change.
Climate change is hitting communities across the globe in deeply personal ways, especially in terms of health, migration, and inequality. Let's start with health impacts.
When we think about climate change, we don't always think about hospitals or doctor visits. But rising temperatures and pollution are causing a surge in respiratory illnesses, especially in cities with poor air quality.
Yes, asthma, lung infections, allergies. All of these are getting worse due to smog, heat waves, and increased pollen in the air. And it's often children and the elderly who suffer the most.
There's also the issue of heat stress. Prolonged exposure to extreme heat can cause heat exhaustion, strokes, and even death, especially for people without access to air conditioning or clean water.
And then there's the spread of vector-borne diseases. Warmer climates are expanding the range of mosquitoes and ticks. Diseases like malaria, dengue fever, chikungunya, and even Zika are appearing in places they never did before.
In other words, climate change is creating new public health emergencies, especially in regions that lack strong health systems.
That brings us to another major consequence: climate migration. People are being forced to leave their homes, not because of war or politics, but because the environment around them is no longer livable.
Exactly. Crops fail, water dries up, floods destroy homes, and people, especially in rural or coastal regions, have no choice but to move. Some migrate to nearby cities. Others cross borders in search of safety and opportunity.
The numbers are staggering. According to the UN, over 20 million people a year are displaced by climate-related disasters, and that number could double in the coming decades.
But migration isn't just about moving from one place to another. It brings economic challenges, social tensions, and political questions. Where will these people go? Will they be welcomed? Can cities handle the influx?
And unfortunately, the burden falls disproportionately on the poorest and most vulnerable communities. Those with the least resources, who contributed least to climate change, are the ones paying the highest price.
It's a tragic irony. Wealthy countries have historically produced the most emissions, but it's people in developing nations, in low-lying islands or in rural farming communities, who are suffering first and worst.
And inequality isn't just between countries, it's within them too. In major cities, low-income neighborhoods often have fewer trees, worse air quality, and less access to healthcare, making them more vulnerable to heat waves and pollution.
We can't talk about climate change without talking about justice. Climate action must include human rights, fairness, and equity. Otherwise, we're just treating symptoms, not the root problem.
So what can be done?
First, governments must invest in resilient healthcare systems, especially in areas most at risk. That means access to clean water, reliable energy, trained health workers, and emergency response systems.
Second, we need policies that protect climate migrants. These people aren't just moving by choice, they're fleeing from climate disasters. They need support, rights, and safe places to rebuild their lives.
And third, maybe most importantly, we need to amplify the voices of vulnerable communities. Too often, the people most affected are excluded from decision-making.
Exactly. Cities are where more than half of the world's population lives. They're economic hubs, cultural centers, and drivers of innovation, but also major sources of emissions and vulnerabilities.
The big question is, how can cities adapt to a warming world? Can we make them more sustainable, resilient, and livable, even as they grow?
Cities face a unique set of climate risks: heat waves, flooding, air pollution, water shortages, and even infrastructure failure.
Yes. Just look at what happened in New York City when Hurricane Sandy hit in 2012. Subways flooded. Power went out. Entire neighborhoods were underwater, and similar scenes are repeating in places like Mumbai, Jakarta, and Lagos.
Or the deadly heat wave in Paris back in 2003, which killed thousands. Cities act like heat traps. The concrete, glass, and asphalt absorb and retain heat, creating what's called the urban heat island effect.
So, how do we fix this? One answer is sustainable urban development. That means planning cities in a way that reduces emissions and increases resilience.
Think green buildings, renewable energy, efficient waste management, and access to green spaces. These are all part of a sustainable city blueprint.
And then there's infrastructure, roads, bridges, drainage systems. These need to be climate resilient. For example, raised walkways to avoid flooding, or heat-resistant materials for public transport lines.
Speaking of transport, let's talk about green mobility. Transportation is one of the biggest contributors to urban emissions. So cities are now investing in electric buses, bike lanes, pedestrian zones, and mass transit.
Take Copenhagen, for instance. It's often called one of the world's greenest cities. Over 60% of its population commutes by bike, and it's aiming to become carbon neutral by 2025.
Or Bogota, Colombia, which pioneered the bus rapid transit BRT system, an affordable, efficient alternative to private cars that cuts emissions and improves mobility.
But not every city is moving in the right direction. In many places, poor planning, lack of investment, and political resistance are slowing progress.
And then there's the issue of climate injustice. Low-income communities and cities often live in the most vulnerable areas. Flood zones, informal housing, polluted neighborhoods, with the least access to resources or protection.
Exactly. So when we talk about climate adaptation, it's not just about technology, it's about equity. Are we protecting everyone or just a privileged few?
So, what can cities do right now?
First, invest in local climate action. That includes upgrading infrastructure, protecting green spaces, and ensuring early warning systems for disasters.
Second, engage communities. People who live in a neighborhood often know best what their community needs. Urban adaptation should be bottom-up, not just top-down.
And third, build partnerships between governments, private companies, scientists, and citizens. The scale of the challenge is too big for any one group to solve alone.
Absolutely. Cities have the potential to lead the climate fight. They're centers of innovation and change. If we get it right in cities, we can transform the way billions of people live.
And time is of the essence. Every new building, every new road, every decision we make today shapes the future. We can build cities that are cleaner, safer, and more just. But we have to act fast.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope this episode made you think about the city you live in and what role you can play in making it more sustainable.
Whether it's riding your bike, planting trees, or supporting climate-friendly policies, every action counts.
Whether it's riding your bike, planting trees, or supporting climate-friendly policies, every action counts.
For over a century, we've depended on fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas. They've powered our homes, cars, and economies, but at a major cost. Greenhouse gas emissions that are heating up the planet.
The science is clear. Fossil fuels are the largest driver of climate change. If we want to avoid the worst effects, we need to transition to clean energy, and fast.
This is what's called the energy transition. Moving from a fossil fuel-based system to one powered by renewables like solar, wind, hydro, and geothermal. But it's not just about technology. It's also about politics, economics, and accountability. Yes, in fact, Studies show that just 100 companies are responsible for over 70% of global emissions since 1988. That includes oil giants, gas producers, and coal companies.
So the obvious question is, what are they doing about it now? Are they changing? Are they helping or just pretending?
That's where the term greenwashing comes in. It refers to when a company markets itself as environmentally friendly, but its actions don't match the message.
Which brings us to the role of big corporations. Some of the world's largest companies, especially in the energy and industrial sectors, have contributed enormously to global emissions. Like an oil company running ads about planting trees while still investing billions in new fossil fuel extraction projects.
Or a fashion brand claiming to be eco-conscious while dumping toxic waste into rivers and underpaying workers. It's all about optics rather than real impact.
But to be fair, some companies are making real efforts. Tech firms investing in carbon neutrality, car manufacturers shifting to electric vehicles, or energy companies developing large-scale wind and solar projects.
Absolutely. You have companies setting net zero targets, reporting their emissions transparently, and investing in circular economies or green supply chains.
The challenge is knowing who's serious and who's just doing it for the headlines.
That's why transparency and regulation matter. We need strong climate reporting standards, independent audits, and public pressure to hold companies accountable.
And consumers have power too. Where we spend, invest, and work makes a difference. Supporting ethical, sustainable businesses sends a strong message.
Let's also not forget the workers in fossil fuel industries. The energy transition needs to be a just transition, providing retraining, new jobs, and support for communities that have long depended on coal, oil, or gas.
Right. It's not about blaming individuals, it's about changing systems and demanding responsibility from the top down. While climate change can often feel overwhelming, one of the most powerful forces rising against it is the new generation. Young people around the world are standing up, speaking out, and demanding action.
And not just in protests. They're starting organizations, building apps, planting trees, writing books, even challenging world leaders at global summits.
Let's start with one of the biggest movements. Fridays for Future, inspired by Greta Thunberg. It began with one girl sitting outside the Swedish parliament in 2018, and now it's a global youth movement.
Millions of students have joined climate strikes in over 150 countries, holding signs that say things like, "There is no planet B," or "Listen to the science." It's a powerful reminder that the future generation isn't waiting. They're leading.
And that leadership is being shaped, in part, by education. Schools play a critical role in helping young people understand climate science, develop critical thinking, and gain the skills needed to create change.
Unfortunately, not all education systems are up to the task. In many places, climate education is missing or outdated. Some schools barely touch the topic or treat it as just another science unit.
But that's starting to change. Countries like Italy have made climate education mandatory, and others are integrating sustainability across subjects. Not just in science, but also in literature, history, and even math.
Education isn't just about facts. It's about empowerment. Giving young people the confidence and tools to become climate activists, innovators, and responsible citizens.
And a big part of that empowerment today comes from social media. Platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube have become spaces where climate-conscious youth share ideas, organize events, and mobilize millions.
Yes, social media has its downsides, but it's also helping to build a global climate community. A teenager in Nairobi can connect with another in Berlin or Buenos Aires, share resources, and collaborate. In fact, many international conferences now include a youth voice. Though young activists still often say they're being heard but not truly listened to.
That's why intergenerational dialogue is key. We need teachers, parents, scientists, politicians, everyone, to take youth seriously and work together. Let's also talk about youth-led initiatives. Around the world, students are creating climate podcasts, founding nonprofits, hosting online summits, and even influencing policy through youth advisory councils.
And schools must also teach climate justice, highlighting how the crisis doesn't affect everyone equally. Students should learn about environmental racism, indigenous knowledge, and the role of privilege in climate resilience. And schools must also teach climate justice, highlighting how the crisis doesn't affect everyone equally. Students should learn about environmental racism, indigenous knowledge, and the role of privilege in climate resilience.
It's not just about saving the planet. It's about building a world that's fair, inclusive, and sustainable.
So what can we do to support this movement?
If you're a parent or teacher, encourage young people to ask questions and explore solutions. If you're a policymaker, make climate education a national priority. And if you're a student, keep speaking up. You are not too young to make a difference.
And remember, education isn't limited to the classroom. Every conversation, every shared post, every project can be part of the learning journey.
In the end, young people aren't just the leaders of tomorrow, they're leading right now. Let's give them the tools, the space, and the respect they deserve.
Individual actions matter, and even more so when they lead to collective action. Let's start by exploring some of the things we can each do in our everyday lives.
One of the easiest starting points is recycling. Sorting waste properly, reusing what we can, and reducing the amount of stuff we throw away makes a real difference, especially in areas overwhelmed by plastic and landfill waste.
But we also have to go beyond recycling and think about responsible consumption. That means buying less, choosing quality over quantity, and supporting sustainable brands when we can.
Exactly. Every time we shop, we're casting a vote with our wallets for the kind of world we want. Choosing local products, organic food, and eco-friendly packaging adds up.
Another area where we can all make changes is transportation. Walking, biking, using public transit, or switching to electric vehicles helps reduce emissions. And it's often healthier and cheaper, too.
I've even started carpooling with my neighbors. It's simple, and we save money and emissions.
And then there's energy use at home. Switching off lights, using energy-efficient appliances, and maybe even installing solar panels if possible. It's all part of building a greener lifestyle.
But beyond individual choices, collective action is where the real power lies. For example, voting. Supporting leaders and policies that take the climate crisis seriously is one of the most impactful things we can do.
Yes, we need to vote not just for presidents, but for mayors, city councils, school boards. All of these roles influence environmental decisions at the local level.
There's also activism. Joining a local climate group, participating in peaceful protests, signing petitions, or even organizing a community cleanup can raise awareness and inspire others.
And let's not forget citizen participation, attending public meetings, pushing for better waste management, greener public transports, or more trees in your neighborhood.
Change often starts at the community level. When we speak up together, governments and companies listen.
And if you're active on social media, use your voice. Share reliable climate information, promote local initiatives, or highlight sustainable businesses. You never know who you might inspire.
Exactly. Change spreads through conversation, through stories, through people daring to act, even in small ways.
And look, we're not saying you have to be perfect. It's not about doing everything. It's about doing something and encouraging others to do something too.
Because when millions of people take small steps in the same direction, we create a powerful movement.
So here's a quick recap of what you can do starting today. Recycle and reduce waste. Consume mindfully, buy less, choose better. Walk, bike, or use public transportation. Conserve energy at home. Vote for climate-conscious leaders. Join or support local climate initiatives. Speak up, online and offline.
We don't need a few people doing it perfectly. We need millions doing it imperfectly together.
That's how change happens from the ground up.
Thanks for joining us today. If this episode gave you some hope or motivation, share it with someone. Let's keep building momentum. One person, one action, one community at a time.
Until next time, stay mindful and stay active. And subscribe to this channel to continue bringing more information.
Goodbye, everyone.